the network of now. It is Wednesday, October 14th, and we've got 20 days till Election Day this morning. We are talking about Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation hearings in her Supreme Court nomination, the effects of RBG's death in the Supreme Court, and some of these early rulings that are coming out, Trump campaign rallies in states despite the COVID-19 spikes there, the Senate races that are coming up before the election, and a historic voter turnout that we're seeing in Georgia and Texas. All this and more this morning on the AM Report. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining. It is a lovely Wednesday morning, and we've got 20 days left until the election. And good morning to Ariana in New Orleans, Mark Goldman from LA, and Shivani from Brooklyn. Thank you for joining this morning. And this morning, we're entering the third day of the confirmation hearings for Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett before the United States Senate Judiciary Committee. And the hearings yesterday were certainly troubling, mostly because of Amy Coney Barrett's refusal to respond to key questions about her positions on hot topic issues that many liberals and Democrats and really the majority of Americans are concerned will be overturned in terms of their rights. Now, during her second day of her confirmation hearings, she was silent on a variety of issues, including healthcare, Roe v. Wade, and others. And where she was silent was particularly troubling. She refused to give answers on climate change. She said that she couldn't tell the Senate whether she thought Roe v. Wade was wrongly decided. She wouldn't say if she agreed with the late Justice Antonin Scalia in his opinion against marriage equality. She refused to recuse herself from election-related disputes, saying and wouldn't say if she thinks Trump can unilaterally delay the election. She said, and I quote, "I can't commit about Roe v. Wade." And as for how she'd rule on a potential election dispute by the president, as we know, Donald Trump has projected that he wishes to take the outcome of the 2020 presidential election to the courts, even if it's close. She said, quote, "If I give off-the-cuff answers, I would basically be a legal pundit." She also said that she has, quote, "no firm views on climate change," which is extremely troubling. And with regard to Roe v. Wade, let's listen to a little bit of her answer about Roe v. Wade and her position on it when she gave this answer to Senator Amy Klobuchar about super precedents. Let's watch that now. really saying here. She's saying that Roe v. Wade isn't super precedent, despite the fact that the Supreme Court itself has said in the Planned Parenthood case that came up in the early 90s that Roe v. Wade is super precedent. She is saying that it's not super precedent merely because Amy Klobuchar and other Democratic senators are asking her about what she feels about Roe v. Wade because of her literary works and academic works criticizing Roe v. Wade. So if by very virtue of she being asked about her troubling positions about Roe v. Wade, it is not super precedent, then that's not something workable. And I thought that answer was very troubling by Amy Coney Barrett, and her denial of refusal to acknowledge climate change or to commit to a peaceful transfer of power. Very troubling answers, which I thought the justification she used to skirt answering the questions was disingenuous at best. Now, because of this, 88 faculty members at the University of Notre Dame, which is where Amy Coney Barrett teaches law, have asked for her, called on her to say that it's vital, this is their statement, that she release a public statement calling for a halt to the nomination process until after the presidential election. These are her colleagues at the University of Notre Dame. And one final point about her presentation yesterday, she did also claim during her hearing that she has, quote, never discriminated against anyone based on, quote, sexual preference with regard to LGBTQ plus rights. Of course, sexual orientation is not a preference, which is one of the real underpinnings of the arguments that have been made in support of LGBTQ rights, that it's not a choice. These aren't lifestyle choices. They're not preferences. These are the way people are born, including me. So very, very troubling. And we are already seeing the effects of not having Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court and what a potentially conservative bent Supreme Court will do. In the very first day of their term, of this new Supreme Court term, which began August 5th, Justices Thomas and Alito, who are the most conservative justices on the Supreme Court, called for the overturning of Obergefell v. Hodges, which is the 2015 landmark ruling that made marriage equality the law of the land. And I'll note Amy Coney Barrett refused to answer about that issue. And the Supreme Court has ruled this week that President Trump's administration can end the population counting for the 2020 U.S. Census, which earlier than they had originally planned, which is just a total blow to civil rights groups that are worried about undercounting, particularly for racial minorities. And the census and its accuracy are extremely important because it determines how the U.S. House of Representatives and state legislatures draw voting districts in the next round of redistricting. And it sets the tone and the guidelines for allocating over $1.5 trillion in a year in aid to different states. So the Supreme Court also put an end to a lawsuit which was brought by congressional Democrats that accused Trump of violating anti-corruption provisions of the Constitution with his business dealings. So they refused to hear this appeal. And on a technical issue, they said that there was not legal standing to bring this issue. And this case was focusing on the president's ownership of the Trump International Hotel in Washington and how it has been benefiting from his presidency since he took office. And speaking of the president, he is back on the campaign trail just days after his coronavirus debacle, as 216,000 American lives have now been lost due to the coronavirus. And over the course of 4 days, beginning on Monday, he's holding 4 different rallies in 4 different states there: Florida, Pennsylvania, Iowa, and North Carolina. And what's really troubling about this is we know that he doesn't really believe in masks. He's not pushing them. 3 days ago, Pennsylvania saw its highest spike in COVID cases since April. Iowa today, where the president will be in a rally, has seen a surge in COVID-19 hospitalizations just yesterday. And Florida yesterday is reporting 47 new deaths and more than 1,500 new cases in one day. And let's hear a little bit of the president at his rally just I believe it was 2 days ago now, and the kind of messaging that is coming out of him. say is that he's immune, which is just scientifically not proven. It's reckless, and he's still within the window from his positive result, if we are to believe his timelines that are publicly reported about his positive results, where he could still be infectious. And he's holding these rallies in states that are seeing spikes in their cases and not doing anything to protect them and promoting misinformation about the virus. And really, it's to detract from the fact that his administration has had a total and utter failing to coordinate a federal response to the coronavirus. So what we know is also Rudy Giuliani, who is Donald Trump's personal attorney and the former mayor of New York, was in Pennsylvania yesterday, speaking with Trump supporters, and he was saying, and I quote, "People don't die of COVID-19 anymore." And this was in a crowded room of Trump supporters in Philadelphia just yesterday. He said, quote, "Young people don't die at all." And he also said that middle-aged people die very little, and even elderly people have a 1% chance of dying. I'll note that the United States has just a small percentage of the world's population and over a quarter of the world's deaths because of COVID-19. So that's kind of what's going on the presidential race. Very troubling stuff. And let's turn to the U.S. Senate. Now, 14 of this year's Senate races are looking competitive, with 12 of those seats being held by Republicans. So Republicans are defending more seats than Democrats in the current race. And Democrats need to win at least 5 of the 14 to retake a Senate majority, because there is one Senate Democrat, Doug Jones in Alabama, who's vulnerable and is looking. It looks like he will lose that seat. So let's look a little bit at the polling that's coming out of these states, and really what we're seeing is very competitive races. But in several swing states, we are seeing Democrats with a sizable lead over their Republican counterparts. We are seeing 6 races where Democrats are favored, and several races that are favored by Republicans where Democrats are polling very well inside the margin of error. So those are toss-ups for the Democrats as we roll through the 2020 election. And the 2020 election right now is underway. It is looking to be historic. What we know is that almost 20 million Americans have already voted as of yesterday. Early voting opened Monday in Georgia and yesterday in Texas. And Georgia's record Georgia is seeing a record number of ballots cast during the first day of early voting. Yesterday, 128,000 people voted in Georgia, but people are waiting in very long lines. These lines are being well reported. Sometimes some are reporting 8 to 10 hour waits in these lines. And while some are saying that this is just because of voter enthusiasm and high turnout, others are saying that in no democracy should people have to wait 8 to 10 hours to vote, even if there is a great deal of voter enthusiasm, that we should expect voter enthusiasm. So troubling in Georgia, which is also known for its attempts to suppress the vote. And Brian Kemp and his attempts to suppress the vote are well documented through tactics like this. And in Texas, we're seeing a great records being shattered in Texas. Opening day voting records were shattered early in the day in Texas yesterday as early voting started. So 97% of eligible voters in Travis County, which is home to Austin, which is the most liberal city in Texas, 97% of the eligible voters there are registered to vote. And yesterday, nearly 36,000 people voted early there, while in Harris County, which is home to Houston, records were shattered for early day voting with 128,000 ballots cast just on the first day. So that's just the first day of early voting. By comparison, in 2016, 100,000 people voted early in Harris County over the entirety of the early voting period. So that we've shattered that record only on the first day in Texas is a sign of some things to come in Texas. What we also know is that Texas has also broken overall registration records. They've added 1.8 million new registered voters since 2016. So all in all, we are looking at a record turnout in the 2020 presidential election. And this morning, the Amy Coney Barrett confirmation hearings will continue. So we'll stay tuned. This has been the AM Report with Alex Mahajer for HAPS News, the network of now. We are live every weekday morning at 7:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Eastern, with all of your quick, progressive, political news and headlines to get your day started right. If you like this content, if you like this journalism, please consider sponsoring it. Visit me at haps.tv/@ Alex Mahajer, and we will be back tomorrow morning with all of your latest takes. Thanks so much for joining, everybody, and have a fantastic